The sky above Seoul had not been blue for 3 days. Massive crystalline ships hung in the atmosphere like frozen tears, each one large enough to cast entire cities into shadow. Ji-ho stood at the window of the United Earth Defense Council chamber, watching people move through the streets below. They walked quickly, heads down, as if avoiding eye contact with the alien vessels might somehow make them disappear. "They've given us 72 hours, Yuna said from behind him. She was reviewing data on multiple screens, her fingers moving rapidly across the holographic displays. "That deadline expires in 6 hours. Ji-ho turned from the window. The council chamber was filled with military officers, scientists, and diplomats from every nation on Earth. Everyone looked exhausted. No one had slept properly since the Valtari arrived. "How many worlds have they conquered?" Ji-ho asked, though he already knew the answer. 40, Yuna replied. 40 different species across 12 star systems. Not one of them fought back. Not one refused. She pulled up images on the main screen. Alien beings of every conceivable shape knelt before a towering figure with luminescent skin. This is Queen Velastris. She's ruled the Valtari Empire for 500 years. Every species that encounters her fleet receives the same ultimatum: submit or die. Every single one has chosen submission. Ji-ho studied the images carefully. The conquered species wore collars around their necks, throats, or whatever appendages they had. The collars glowed with the same light as the Valtari ships. "What do we know about their military capability?" asked General Park, the head of Earth's combined defense forces. A tactical officer named Nari stepped forward. She looked barely 30, but had been analyzing alien technology since the ships arrived. "Their weapons are beyond anything we have. One of their frigates could destroy our entire orbital defense network in under an hour. Their flagship, the Eternal Dominion, could crack Earth's crust if Queen Velastris ordered it." She paused. "We cannot win a military confrontation." The room fell silent. Everyone had suspected this, but hearing it confirmed made it real. "Then we surrender," said one of the diplomats, an older man whose hands shook as he spoke. "We have no choice. We surrender and we live." "We live as slaves," Yuna countered. "We've studied the broadcasts from conquered worlds. The Valtari take everything: resources, technology, culture. The species they conquer become servants, nothing more. Better to serve and survive than to die with pride," the diplomat shot back. Ji-ho walked to the center of the room. He had been quiet throughout most of the emergency sessions over the past 3 days, listening and observing. But now he spoke, and his voice carried authority that made everyone stop and listen. "Has anyone asked why?" Ji-ho said, "Why have 40 species surrendered without a fight? Why has no one ever said no to them?" "Because they want to live," General Park replied. "It's not complicated." "Maybe," Ji-ho said. "Or maybe it's because the Valtari have never encountered a species willing to fight for something more important than survival." He looked around the room. "I want to know everything about their culture, their ceremonies, their traditions, especially their subjugation rituals." Yuna understood immediately. She began pulling up new files. "I'll get our cultural analysis team on it." "But Ji-ho, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that we need to meet with Queen Velastris," Ji-ho said. "Face to face." The room erupted in arguments. Several people shouted that sending anyone to the alien flagship was suicide. Others said it would be seen as a gesture of submission. But Ji-ho raised his hand, and the noise gradually died down. "They've given us a deadline. They expect a response. Let's give them one." He looked at Yuna. "Contact their flagship. Tell them Earth's representative wants to meet the Queen before the deadline expires." Over the next 4 hours, a small team worked frantically. Yuna coordinated with cultural specialists. A young linguist named Hana discovered something crucial buried in the Valtari broadcasts. She ran into the council chamber, waving her tablet. "I found something," Hana said, out of breath. "It's about their ceremony. The ceremony of chains. Every conquered species performs it the same way. They speak specific words in their own language, excepting the caller. The words translate to, 'We yield our will to the eternal throne.' And?" Jiho asked. "And," Hana continued, "no species has ever refused. Not one. The Valtari language doesn't even have a word for a subject denying the throne. It's not part of their worldview. They literally cannot imagine someone saying no." Jiho felt something click into place in his mind. What happens if someone does? Unknown, Hana admitted. There's no precedent. But based on their cultural psychology, it would be a profound shock to their entire system of belief. "Good," Jiho said quietly. Within the hour, the Valtari responded to Earth's request. Queen Velastris would receive one representative. Only one. They would come unarmed. They would come immediately. Jiho prepared to go. Yuna tried to argue, saying they should send someone more expendable, but Jiho refused. "If I'm asking humanity to trust me, I need to be the one standing in front of her." A security officer named Mino insisted on accompanying him. "You go, I go," he said simply. There was no arguing with him. A communications officer named Doyan joined them as well, carrying equipment to broadcast everything back to Earth. "The world needs to see this," he explained. The three of them boarded a shuttle. As they lifted off from Earth's surface, Jiho looked down at the planet. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. 7 billion people lived down there. 7 billion lives depending on what happened in the next few hours. The flight to the Eternal Dominion took 20 minutes. The alien flagship was enormous up close, its crystalline structure refracting light into rainbow patterns. A docking port opened like a mouth, and their shuttle was pulled inside by a tractor beam. They stepped out into a corridor that seemed to be made of living light. Valtari soldiers escorted them deeper into the ship. The soldiers were tall, graceful, and completely silent. They carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Finally, they reached a massive door. It opened slowly, revealing a throne room the size of a stadium. The walls were covered with treasures from 40 different worlds. Banners, artifacts, pieces of culture frozen in time. Trophies of conquest out at the far end, sitting on a throne made of some material that looked like frozen starlight, was Queen Velastris. She was enormous, at least 8 feet tall. Her skin glowed with soft light that pulsed in rhythm with her breathing. Her eyes were ancient, knowing, cold. She had seen civilizations rise and fall. She had watched species kneel before her for 5 centuries. Jiho walked forward, Minho and Doyan flanking him. The eyes of the entire galaxy seemed to watch through Doyan's broadcast equipment. Queen Velastris spoke, and her voice resonated like crystal chimes. A translator device rendered her words into human language. "You are the speaker for humanity?" "I am," Jiho replied. "Then speak the words," the queen said. "Accept the caller. Submit to the eternal throne. Your species will be preserved. You will serve the Empire and know peace." She gestured, and a Valtari attendant approached carrying a collar identical to those worn by 40 other species. It glowed with soft light, beautiful and terrible at the same time. Ho looked at the collar. He looked at the queen. He thought about everything Hannah had told him. He thought about 7 billion people watching, and he made his choice. Jiho stared at the collar in the attendant's hands. The metal glowed with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like poisoned honey. Behind him, he could feel Minho's tension, the security officer's hand instinctively moving toward a weapon he did not carry. Dian's camera captured everything, broadcasting this moment to Earth and beyond. Queen Velastris leaned forward on her throne, her luminescent skin brightening slightly. She had done this 40 times before. 40 species had stood where Jiho now stood. 40 species had accepted the collar. This was a formality, nothing more. A ritual as certain as sunrise. "Take the collar," she said, her voice resonating through the vast throne room. "Speak the words of submission. Your people will be spared. You will join the Empire, and your species will endure for generations under our protection." Jiho reached out slowly. His hand moved toward the collar. Every Valtari in the room watched with calm certainty. The attendant held the collar higher, ready to place it around the human's neck. Jiho's fingers touched the metal. It felt warm, almost alive. For a moment, the entire galaxy held its breath. Then Jiho's hand closed around the collar. He pulled it from the attendant's grasp, and instead of placing it around his neck, he held it up in front of him, looking at it carefully. "This is your symbol of dominance," Jiho said quietly. His voice carried in the silent room. 40 species wear this. 40 species spoke words of surrender and accepted eternal servitude. "Yes," Queen Velastris said. She seemed pleased that the human understood. "You will be the 41st. Speak the words." Jiho looked up at her. His eyes met hers, and he did not look away. No, the single word fell into the throne room like a stone into still water. Ripples of shock spread through every Valtari present. Several of them stepped back as if physically struck. The queen's luminescent skin flickered, her light dimming and then brightening in rapid succession, like a flame caught in wind. "What did you say?" she asked. Her voice had changed. The certainty was gone. "I said no," Jiho repeated, louder this time. "We acknowledge your power, Queen Velastris. Your ships could destroy our world in hours. Your weapons could turn our cities to ash. Your empire spans 12 star systems. All of this is true." He paused and then continued. "But you cannot have our freedom. You cannot have our dignity. You can destroy us, but you cannot make us kneel." With both hands, Jiho bent the collar. The metal resisted at first, but human hands driven by human will pressed harder. The collar bent. Then, with a sound like breaking glass, it snapped in 2. Jiho dropped the broken pieces onto the floor of the throne room. They clattered on the crystalline surface, the light inside them flickering and dying. The throne room erupted into chaos. Valtari warriors drew their weapons, energy crackling along the barrels. Attendants rushed backward. The queen's advisors shouted in their musical language, their voices high with alarm. In 500 years, no one had refused the collar. In 500 years, no one had broken it. Minho moved to stand beside Jiho, his body tense and ready despite having no weapon. Doyun kept his camera running, capturing everything. On Earth, 7 billion people watched. Across the Valtari Empire, on 40 subjugated worlds, beings who had surrendered watched this human do what they had never dared to do. Queen Velastris rose from her throne. She towered over Jiho, her 8-foot frame radiating power and rage. Her skin blazed bright as a star, light pouring from her in waves. The warriors aimed their weapons at the 3 humans. One word from the queen, and they would be erased from existence. "You dare," she whispered, and her whisper was louder than a shout. "You dare refuse me? I have conquered 40 worlds. I have ruled for 5 centuries. I have never been denied, never." "Then maybe," Jiho said calmly. "It was time someone said no." The queen stared at him. Her hand rose, and every warrior in the room tensed, ready to fire. Jiho did not flinch. He stood straight, meeting her gaze, ready to die for the choice he had made, But the Queen's hand stopped halfway. Something in her ancient eyes changed. The rage was still there, burning bright, but something else had appeared alongside it. Confusion. And beneath that, something she perhaps had not felt in centuries. Curiosity. Why? She asked. The simple question seemed to cost her something. Why choose death over survival? Your species could endure under our rule. You would live. Why throw that away? Jiho thought about his answer carefully. Every word mattered now. Because, he said slowly, there are things more important than survival. Because a life lived in chains is not really life at all. Because if we accepted your caller, we would still be alive, but everything that makes us human would be dead. He gestured to the treasures lining the throne room walls. Artifacts from 40 different worlds. You've conquered 40 species, Jiho continued. You've taken their freedom, their cultures, their futures. But you've never understood the one thing you cannot take by force. And what is that? The Queen asked. The will to be free, Jiho replied. You can destroy us, Queen Velastris. You can turn Earth to dust. You can kill every man, woman, and child on our planet. But you cannot make us submit. And that's the difference between us and those 40 species. We would rather die free than live as slaves. The throne room was completely silent now. Every Voltari stared at the human who had spoken the unspeakable. Queen Velastris slowly lowered her hand. The warriors lowered their weapons slightly, uncertain. The Queen walked down from her throne, her footsteps echoing. She moved closer to Jiho, studying him as if he were a puzzle she could not solve. You are willing to sacrifice 7 billion of your kind for pride? She asked. Not for pride, Jiho corrected. For principle. For the belief that some things cannot be bought or taken. For the idea that we are not yours to rule. The Queen circled him slowly. Minho tensed, but Jiho remained still. If I destroy your world, she said softly, what will you have gained? The knowledge that we never surrendered, Jiho replied. The knowledge that humanity faced annihilation and did not bow. That may not seem like much to you, but to us, it is everything. Queen Velastris stopped in front of him again. Her luminescent skin had dimmed to a soft glow. She looked at this small, fragile creature who had done what no being had done in 500 years. You have broken the collar, she said. You have refused the eternal throne. By the laws of the Empire, you and your species should be executed immediately. Then do it, Jiho said quietly. But know that you will always remember us. The species that said no. The species that chose freedom over survival. You may erase us from existence, but you cannot erase what we represent. The Queen stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to her guards. Take them to the detention cells, she commanded. I will decide their fate. The warriors moved forward, grabbing Jiho, Mino, and Doyan. They were pulled away, but Doyan's camera kept broadcasting until the very last moment. The last image transmitted to Earth was Jiho's face, calm and unafraid. As he was led away, Queen Velastris returned to her throne. She sat in silence for a long time, staring at the broken collar on the floor. Around her, advisors whispered urgently, demanding the humans be executed immediately, demanding Earth be destroyed as an example. But the Queen said nothing. She was thinking about one word that had changed everything across the Empire. On 40 worlds, beings who had surrendered watched the broadcast. They had seen a species smaller and weaker than themselves refuse what they had accepted. They had seen someone break the collar they wore, and in the darkness of their servitude, something began to stir. Something the Voltari Empire had never faced before. Hope. The detention cell aboard the Eternal. Dominion was small, but not uncomfortable. Jiho sat on a bench made of the same crystalline material as everything else on the ship. Minho paced back and forth like a caged animal. Defiant checked his equipment, making sure the final transmission had gone through before they were captured. 7 billion people just watched you sign our death warrant, Minho said. But there was no anger in his voice, only exhaustion. Maybe, Gio replied quietly. Or maybe we just showed 7 billion people that we don't have to accept what we're told is inevitable. Defiant looked up from his equipment. The broadcast went out. Not just to Earth. The Valtari systems didn't block it. Every world in their empire received it. He smiled grimly. If we die, at least everyone will know what we did. What they did not know was that at that very moment, 40 worlds were awakening on Kilo 7, a planet on the outer edge of the Valtari Empire. A man named Tai Yang watched the broadcast in a hidden bunker beneath the surface. Kilo 7 had been conquered 300 years ago. Its people had worn the collar for so long that most no longer remembered what freedom felt like. But Tai Yang remembered. His grandmother had told him stories, passed down through generations, stories of a time before the Valtari came. He had gathered others who remembered. They called themselves the Embers because they kept alive a tiny spark of resistance in a galaxy gone dark. But it had always been just talk, just dreams. The Valtari were too powerful. Resistance was suicide. Until now. Tai Yang played the broadcast again. He watched the human break the collar. He listened to the words. We would rather die free than live as slaves. He actually said no, whispered Sarah, one of Tai Yang's closest friends in the resistance. Her voice trembled with something between awe and terror. He looked at Queen Velastris and said no. He's insane, said another rebel, a young man named Wu. The Valtari will destroy his entire world. Maybe, Tai Yang said slowly, but he showed us something we forgot. The collar only works if we accept it. He reached up and touched the glowing band around his own neck. He had worn it his entire life. Everyone on Kilo 7 wore one. What if we stopped accepting it? The room fell silent. The idea was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. You're talking about rebellion, Sarah said. Actual rebellion. The last time anyone on Kilo 7 tried that was 200 years ago. The Valtari killed 10,000 people as punishment. I know, Tai Yang said. But how long do we keep living like this? How many more generations wear these collars? How many more centuries do we wait for someone to save us? He looked at the frozen image of Jiho on the screen. Maybe it's time we saved ourselves? On Earth, the reaction to Jiho's defiance was mixed. Some celebrated him as a hero. Others cursed him as a fool who had doomed humanity. The United Earth Defense Council was in emergency session. Yuna stood at the front of the room, fielding questions and accusations. He had no authority to refuse on behalf of all humanity, shouted one delegate. He had exactly the authority we gave him when we sent him up there, Yuna shot back. And he did what humanity has always done when faced with tyranny. He stood up. He should have consulted us, another delegate protested. There wasn't time, Yuna said. And even if there was, what would we have decided? Would we have voted to surrender? Would we have chosen survival over dignity? She looked around the room. Jiho made a choice. Now we have to live with it, or die with it. General Park stood up. Either way, we need to prepare. If the Valtari are coming, we fight. With what? Someone asked. We already know we can't win. Maybe we can't win, Nari said, standing beside the general. But we can make them bleed. We can Have them remember us. While Earth prepared and Kilo 7 plotted, Queen Velastris sat alone in her private chamber. She had dismissed her advisors hours ago. They had all demanded the same thing. Execute the humans. Destroy Earth. Make an example that would terrify any other species that might consider defiance. But the Queen did not act. She watched the broadcast of Jiho's defiance over and over. She studied his face, his words, his absolute conviction. In 500 years, she had never encountered anything like this. A chime announced a visitor. Her chief advisor, a Voltari named Corvith, entered without waiting for permission. "My queen, you must act," he said urgently. "Reports are coming in from across the Empire." The subjugated species saw the broadcast. There are whispers of rebellion. On Kilo 7, there was an incident. 3 Voltari overseers were attacked. On Talvin 9, workers have stopped reporting to their duties. "How many incidents?" the Queen asked. 17 so far," Corvith admitted. "Small things mostly, but the pattern is spreading. That human's defiance has planted a seed." Queen Velastris turned to face her advisor. "One human breaks a collar, and 40 worlds begin to shake. What does that tell you, Corvith?" "That we must crush this rebellion before it grows," Corvith replied immediately. "Or," the Queen said softly, "it tells us that our empire was never as stable as we believed. It tells us that fear and force are not the same as loyalty. It tells us that for 500 years we have been sitting on a powder keg, and this human just lit the match." Corvith stared at her. "My queen, you cannot possibly be considering—" "I am considering everything," Velastris interrupted. "That is what rulers do when their certainty is challenged." She pulled up a map of the Empire. Red marks indicated where incidents had occurred. In just 6 hours since the broadcast, 17 incidents across 12 star systems. Small things, yes. A few attacks. Some work stoppages. Acts of defiance that would normally be dealt with swiftly and brutally, but they were spreading. "If I destroy Earth," the Queen said, thinking aloud, "what happens?" "The rebellion ends," Corvith said firmly. "The subjugated species see what happens to those who defy the throne. Order is restored. Or," the Queen countered, "Earth becomes a martyr. The humans die, but their message lives. We would rather die free than live as slaves. That message spreads further. The rebellion grows stronger, not weaker." "Then what do you propose?" Corvith asked, frustrated. The Queen did not answer. She walked to her window and looked out at the stars. 40 worlds under her control. Trillions of beings wearing her collar. An empire that had stood for 5 centuries, built on the principle that power made right, that submission was rational, that resistance was futile, that one human had challenged that principle. And the empire was already fracturing. She made a decision. "Bring the human Jiho to me," she commanded. "Alone. I want to speak with him." An hour later, Jiho was escorted from his cell. The guards brought him through the vast corridors of the Eternal Dominion. This time, they did not take him to the throne room. Instead, they brought him to a smaller chamber, circular and quiet. Queen Velastris stood at the window, her back to him. The guards left, and the door sealed shut. They were alone. "Do you know what you have done?" she asked without turning around. "I refuse to surrender," Jiho replied. "You started a rebellion," the Queen corrected. She turned to face him. 17 incidents in 6 hours. Attacks on overseers. Work stoppages. Acts of defiance. All because of you. Because you showed them that it was possible to say no. "Good," Jiho said simply. The Queen moved closer. "You do not understand. I could destroy your world right now. One command, and Earth becomes dust. Would that be worth it? Would your defiance matter if your entire species dies?" Jiho met her gaze. "You keep asking that question, like you think the answer will change. It won't. Yes, it would be worth it, because we would die free. And every species in your empire would know that we chose death over submission. You would doom your people for a principle. Velastris said. My people are already doomed if we accept your caller, Geo replied. At least this way, we die as ourselves. The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised him. I envy you. Geo blinked. What? I envy your certainty, the queen explained. I have ruled for 500 years. I have conquered 40 worlds. I have never been refused, never been challenged, never been wrong. And in one moment, you made me question everything I believed to be true. She paused. I do not know if I hate you or respect you for that. You don't have to do either, Geo said. You just have to let us go. I cannot, Velastris said. If I let you go, the empire falls. Every species will demand what you have taken. Freedom, choice, self-determination, the order I have built over 5 centuries will collapse. Then let it collapse, Geo said quietly. Build something better. The queen laughed, but it was a bitter sound. You make it sound simple. It is simple, Geo insisted. Just hard. There's a difference. Before the queen could respond, an alarm began to sound throughout the ship. Corvith's voice came through the communication system, urgent and strained. My queen, we have a situation. Kilo 7 is in open rebellion. Thousands are in the streets. They are removing their collars. The streets of Kilo 7's capital city had not seen this many people gathered in 300 years. Thousands filled the main square, and more were coming every minute. They came from factories and homes, from underground shelters and surface dwellings. They came with fear in their hearts, but determination in their eyes. Tai Yang stood on a platform in the center of the square, his voice amplified by makeshift speakers. Around his neck, he still wore the collar, but his hand gripped it tightly. For 300 years we have worn these, he shouted, and his words echoed across the crowd. For 300 years, we have been slaves. We told ourselves it was necessary. We told ourselves it was survival. We told ourselves we had no choice. The crowd was silent, listening. Valtari security forces were gathering at the edges of the square, but they seemed uncertain. They had never faced anything like this. Subjugated species did not gather in crowds. They did not protest. They accepted. But a human showed us something, Tai Yang continued. A species we have never met, from a world we have never seen. He showed us that we do have a choice. He broke the collar. He said no. Tai Yang's voice rose. If he can say no, so can we. He pulled at the collar around his neck. The metal resisted, designed to be permanent, unbreakable. But Tai Yang pulled harder, muscles straining, face contorted with effort. The collar bent. The light inside it flickered. And then, with a sound like crystal shattering, it broke. Tai Yang held the broken pieces above his head. The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Some cried. All of them understood what this meant. War was coming. Death was coming. But for the first time in 3 centuries, they were free. Thousands of hands reached for their own collars. The sound of breaking metal filled the square. On the Eternal Dominion, Queen Velastris watched the feed from Kilo 7 with something like horror on her face. Jiho stood beside her, also watching. The alarm continued to sound. More reports were flooding in from other worlds. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated. This is what you wanted, the queen said, her voice hollow. This is the galaxy you have created. No, Jiho replied quietly. This is the galaxy that always existed. You just never let anyone see it. Corvith burst into the chamber, his luminescent skin bright with agitation. My queen, we must respond with overwhelming force. Kilo 7 must be made an example. If we do not act now, every world in the Empire will follow. Queen Velastris turned from the screen. Her face was unreadable. How many are in rebellion on Kilo 7? Estimates suggest 50,000 and growing, Corvith reported. Our security forces number only 200 on that world. They are requesting immediate reinforcement. And if we send reinforcements? The Queen asked. If we crush this rebellion with violence, what then? Then order is restored, Corvith said, as if it were obvious. For how long? The Queen challenged. A year? A decade? How long before the next rebellion? How long before we are fighting on every world simultaneously? Then we rule through strength, Corvith insisted. As we always have. The Queen looked at Geo. What would you do, human? If you were in my position, how would you stop this? Geo considered his answer carefully. I wouldn't stop it. I would lead it. Both Valtari stared at him as if he had spoken madness. Lead the rebellion against yourself? Corvith said incredulously. That makes no sense. It makes perfect sense, Geo said. Right now, you have two choices. Fight and destroy worlds that rebel, creating martyrs and ensuring the rebellion spreads. Or negotiate, give them what they want, and transform the empire into something new. We do not negotiate with slaves, Corvith spat. They're not slaves anymore, Geo pointed out. They stopped being slaves the moment they broke their collars. Now they're enemies or they're allies. You choose. Queen Velastris was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that shocked everyone in the room, including herself. I will go to Kilo 7. I will speak with them. My queen, no, Corvith protested. It is too dangerous. They will try to kill you. Perhaps, Velastris said. But if I do not go, I will certainly have to kill them. And if I kill them, I doom the Empire to endless war. She looked at Jiho. You will come with me. Why? Jiho asked. Because they trust you, the Queen replied. Or at least, they trust what you represent. You showed them how to say no. Now show them how to say yes to something better. 3 hours later, a single Valtari shuttle descended toward Kilo 7. Aboard were Queen Velastris, Jiho, and a minimal guard force. Corvith had protested until the last moment, but the Queen's decision was final. The shuttle landed in the square where thousands still gathered. The crowd had grown to over 100,000. They had torn down Valtari statues and symbols. They had burned their collars in massive bonfires. They were armed now, with improvised weapons and a few stolen Valtari firearms. When the Queen's shuttle landed, the crowd surrounded it immediately. Taiyang pushed through the crowd to reach the shuttle. His hand gripped a metal bar, ready to fight. The shuttle door opened. Queen Velastris stepped out first. The crowd fell silent. Here was the being who had ruled them for 3 centuries. Here was their oppressor, walking among them without an army at her back. Then Jiho stepped out behind her. The crowd recognized him from the broadcast. A murmur ran through them, confused and uncertain. People of Kilo 7, the Queen's voice rang out, amplified somehow without technology. I have come to speak with you. We have nothing to say to you, Taiyang shouted back. You took our freedom. You enslaved our world. We do not negotiate with tyrants. We destroy them. The crowd roared its agreement. They pressed closer, weapons raised. The Queen's guards tensed, but Velastris raised her hand to stop them from attacking. Jiho stepped forward, placing himself between the Queen and Taiyang. She came here without an army. She came here to talk. Give her that chance. After everything you've been through, you can afford 5 minutes. Taiyang stared at Jiho. You are the human, the one who broke the collar. I am, Jiho confirmed. Then why do you protect her? Taiyang demanded. She is our enemy. She is your enemy. Right now, she's the only chance for peace, Jiho said. War is easy. It's building something better that's hard. Taiyang looked at the queen, then at Jiho, then at his people. Finally, he lowered his weapon slightly. Speak, he said to Velastris, but choose your words carefully. They may be your last. Queen Velastris stepped forward. She looked out at the 100,000 faces staring at her, with hatred and hope mixed in equal measure. I am Queen Velastris, she began. For 500 years, I have ruled the Voltari Empire. For 500 years, I believe that power made right, that strength justified dominance, that subjugation brought order. She paused. I was wrong. A shocked silence fell over the crowd. A human taught me something in one moment that I failed to learn in 5 centuries, the queen continued. He taught me that a being who submits is not the same as a being who agrees. That control through force is not the same as loyalty through respect. That an empire built on colors is not an empire at all. It is a prison. She looked directly at Taiyang. I cannot undo 300 years of suffering. I cannot give you back what was taken. But I can offer you something I have never offered before. A choice. What choice? Taiyang asked, suspicion heavy in his voice. The choice to be free, Velastris said. I propose the dissolution of the Voltari Empire as it exists. In its place, a coalition. A voluntary alliance of free species, bound not by force, but by mutual benefit. Where you are equals, not subjects. The crowd erupted in chaos. Some shouted their approval. Others yelled that it was a trick, a trap. Taiyang raised his hand for silence. Why should we trust you? He asked. You have lied to us for 3 centuries. You should not trust me, the queen replied honestly. You should test me. You should demand proof. You should make me earn what I have never had to earn before. Your respect. Jiho spoke up. This is the moment. Right here. You can choose war and bloodshed, and maybe, eventually, win your freedom after years of fighting. Or you can choose to build something new, starting now. Both paths have risk. Both paths require courage. But only one path gives you a chance to be more than survivors. Taiyang looked at Sira, at Wu, at the other leaders of the rebellion. He looked at his people, still wearing the marks of their collars, even though the collars themselves were gone. He thought about his grandmother's stories of freedom. He thought about what he wanted for the next generation. If we agree to this coalition, Taiyang said slowly, Kilo 7 governs itself. We answer to no one. Agreed, the queen said without hesitation. And every species in the empire gets the same choice. Taiyang continued. Freedom or alliance, but never servitude. Greed, Velastris repeated. And if any Voltari tries to reimpose the old ways, Taiyang's voice hardened, we have the right to defend ourselves. With force if necessary. The queen paused, then nodded. Agreed. Taiyang lowered his weapon completely. He extended his hand to the queen. She stared at it for a moment, this human gesture from an alien world. Then she understood. She reached out and clasped his hand. The crowd watched in stunned silence as their rebel leader shook hands with the queen who had enslaved them. Then slowly some began to cheer. Others remained silent, uncertain. But the moment had been made. The first step toward something new had been taken, but not everyone was ready for peace. On the edge of the crowd, a group of Voltari hardliners watched with rage in their hearts. They saw their queen betray everything the empire stood for. They saw weakness where there should be strength, and they began to plan their own rebellion. Not against the callers, but in defense of them. The formation of the Galactic Coalition took 6 months. 6 months of negotiations, arguments, compromises, and occasional threats of violence. Representatives from 40 formerly enslaved species gathered on a neutral station, hastily constructed in space between star systems. No one trusted anyone. Everyone wanted guarantees. The process was messy, chaotic, and frustratingly slow, but it was happening. Yuna led Earth's delegation. She had negotiated trade agreements between nations before, but nothing had prepared her for negotiating with 40 different species, each with their own languages, customs, and grievances. She spent 16-hour days in conference rooms, translating not just words, but concepts between beings who thought in fundamentally different ways. "The Telvari want mining rights," she told Jiho during a brief break. They sat in a small observation deck, looking out at the stars. "The Kef want agricultural worlds. The Novar want technology transfers. Everyone wants something, and everyone is afraid of being taken advantage of again. Can you blame them?" Jiho asked. He had remained at the negotiations as Earth's special advisor, though he spent more time mediating disputes than advising anyone. They spent centuries being exploited. Of course, they're cautious. "Cautious is fine," Yuna said tiredly. "Paralyzed is the problem. If we don't finalize this treaty soon, the whole thing falls apart." She was right to be worried. Not everyone supported the coalition. On many worlds, including among the Voltari themselves, factions opposed the changes. They called Queen Velastris a traitor. They said she had destroyed 500 years of order for sentiment and weakness. The most organized opposition came from a Voltari commander named Kalphas. He had been one of the Empire's greatest military leaders, responsible for conquering 6 of the 40 subjugated worlds. He gathered followers, both Voltari and members of other species, who profited under the old system. "The Queen has betrayed us," Kalphas declared in a broadcast that reached millions. "She has surrendered to lesser species because one human refused to kneel. She has thrown away an empire for a fantasy of peace." His image showed him standing before a fleet of warships, all bearing the old imperial insignia. "I say no. I say we restore what was lost. I say we remind the galaxy why they feared us." His fleet consisted of 30 warships, manned by Voltari who refused to accept the new order. It was not enough to threaten the entire coalition, but it was enough to cause serious damage if they chose to attack. Queen Velastris stood in the coalition council chamber when the news of Kalphas's rebellion reached them. Around her sat representatives from Earth, Kilo 7, Telvar, Kef, and dozens of other worlds. They looked at her expectantly, waiting to see how she would respond. "This is your fault," said the Keth representative, a being whose species had suffered greatly under Voltari rule. "Your people cannot accept that their time of dominance is over. They will destroy everything we are trying to build." "Not all my people," Velastris said quietly. "Kalphas represents a faction, not the whole Voltari species. Many of my kind support the coalition, but will they fight against their own?" The Kef representative pressed. "When Kalphas attacks, will Voltari ships fire on Voltari ships?" The Queen had no answer. It was the question that haunted her. She had spent 500 years building loyalty through power. Now she asked for loyalty through principle. She did not know if it would be enough. Taeyang, now representing Kilo 7 in the council, stood up. "We need to prepare for war. Kalphas will not negotiate. He wants the old empire back. We must be ready to defend what we have built." "With what?" asked another representative. "We are 40 species trying to form a unified defense force. We have no structure, no chain of command, no coordinated strategy. Kalphas has 30 warships with experienced crews. We would be slaughtered. Then we run," someone else suggested. "We scatter to our home worlds and defend what we can. And that is how the coalition dies before it begins," Yuna said sharply. She stood, commanding attention. We scatter. Calthus picks us off one by one. He makes examples of a few worlds, and the rest of you fall back in line out of fear. In 6 months, the old empire is restored, and nothing changes. What do you suggest? The Keth representative asked. We fight together, Una said. Not as 40 separate species, but as one coalition. We pool our resources, our ships, our knowledge. We show Calthus and everyone watching that we are stronger together than we ever were alone. Noble words, said the Telvar representative. But words do not stop warships. No, said a new voice from the doorway. But humans might. Everyone turned to see Hyan enter the council chamber. He was a tactical officer in Earth's defense force, young but brilliant. Beside him walked Minji, a scientist whose work on alien technology had made her one of Earth's most valuable assets. We have a plan, Hyan said, walking to the center of the room. Minji activated a holographic display showing ship schematics and tactical formations. The Valtari warships are powerful, but they are designed for overwhelming single targets. They have never faced coordinated attacks from multiple species using different technologies and tactics. Because no one ever fought back, Gio added, understanding where this was going. Exactly, Minji said. We have studied their ships for 6 months. We know their weaknesses. And we have something they do not. 40 different species with 40 different approaches to warfare. If we coordinate properly, we can use that diversity as a weapon. The council members looked at each other. Slowly, cautiously, hope began to replace despair. Over the next month, preparations were made. Hyan coordinated with military leaders from every species. They shared tactical knowledge, integrated their technologies, trained their crews to work together. It was imperfect and rushed, but it was something. Minji led a team of scientists in developing new weapon systems that combined technologies from multiple species. They created shields using Keth energy matrices, weapons using Telvar particle acceleration, and targeting systems using human-computer algorithms. The result was technology that no single species could have developed alone. Queen Velastris contributed what she could. She provided intelligence on Valtari ship weaknesses. She convinced several Valtari military officers to join the coalition forces. And she made a difficult decision. I will command the coalition fleet, she announced. The council chamber erupted in objections. You cannot be trusted, the Keth representative said bluntly. How do we know you will not betray us to Calthus at the critical moment? You do not know, Velastris replied simply. You must trust me, just as I must trust you not to use this opportunity to destroy all Valtari. We either trust each other, or the coalition is already dead. After hours of debate, the council agreed. Velastris would command, but with advisors from every species. Hyan would serve as her tactical officer. Taiyang would coordinate ground forces. Yuna would handle communications and diplomacy. Jiho would serve as liaison between the queen and the other species. A bridge of trust. The confrontation came near a binary star system on the edge of former Valtari space. Calthus had chosen the location deliberately. It was where the Valtari Empire had won its first great victory 500 years ago. He intended to make it the site of the coalition's defeat. 30 Valtari warships hung in space, their crystalline hulls reflecting the light of twin stars. They were arrayed in the traditional Valtari battle formation, overwhelming and intimidating. Facing them was the coalition fleet. 60 ships from 20 different species, each one smaller and less powerful than the Valtari warships, but coordinated in ways Calthus had never seen before. On the bridge of the coalition flagship, Queen Velastris stood with her mixed crew around her. Hyan monitored tactical displays. Minji managed the integrated weapons systems. Jiho watched the communications channels, ready to coordinate between species that still barely understood each other. "Calthus is hailing us," the communications officer reported. "Put him through." Velastris commanded. Calthus's face appeared on the main screen. He looked exactly as a Valtari warrior should. Proud, fierce, certain of victory. "Velastris," he said, using her name without title, "you have fallen far. From queen of an empire to commander of a rabble. I offer you one final chance. Abandon this foolishness. Return to the empire. Help me restore order, and I will grant you mercy." "The empire is gone, Calthus," Velastris replied. "I did not destroy it. It was always broken. I simply stopped pretending otherwise." "Then you will die with your new friends," Calthus said. "All of you. Consider this mercy. I will make it quick." The transmission ended. Calthus's fleet began to advance in perfect formation. "All ships," Hyon said calmly into the fleet-wide channel. "Execute pattern Delta 7. Remember your training. Trust your wing partners. We are stronger together." What followed was unlike any battle the galaxy had seen before. The Valtari ships expected the coalition fleet to scatter or bunch together for a desperate defense. Instead, the coalition ships split into coordinated groups, each group containing ships from multiple species. They attacked from unexpected angles, using tactics no single species had used before. Keth ships provided shields while Telvar ships unleashed concentrated weapons fire. Human ships used unpredictable maneuvers that confused Valtari targeting systems. Ships from Kilo 7 jammed communications, using frequencies the Valtari had never encountered. Calthus's fleet found itself fighting not one enemy, but 20 different enemies simultaneously, each one supporting the others. When Valtari ships focused on one threat, another struck from a blind spot. When they tried to reform their traditional battle lines, coordinated attacks shattered those formations. But the Valtari were still powerful. Coalition ships fell, their crews dying to protect the freedom they had only recently gained. Every loss was felt across the fleet, reported by Jiho to Velastris in a steady stream of grief. "We are losing ships faster than projected," Hyon reported. His tactical displays showed red icons appearing everywhere. "We can win, but the cost will be severe." Velastris watched the battle unfold. She saw ships crewed by species she had once enslaved dying to defend a future she had once denied them. She saw the galaxy she had ruled through fear becoming a galaxy bound by shared sacrifice. She made her decision. "All coalition ships, fall back to defensive positions," she commanded. Then, on a private channel to Calthus, "Enough. We are done killing each other. Surrender?" Calthus asked, surprised. "No," Velastris said. "I challenge you. Single combat. Your ship against mine. Winner determines the fate of both fleets." Calthus laughed. "You always were traditional at heart. Very well. I accept." Jiho grabbed Velastris's arm. "You cannot fight him alone. His ship is one of the most powerful in the fleet." "I am not fighting alone," Velastris said quietly, gesturing to the crew around her. "Humans, Heth, Telvar, beings from Kilo 7, all working together. None of us are." The two flagships separated from their fleets and faced each other. What followed was less a battle and more a test of everything the coalition represented. Calthus relied on superior firepower and traditional tactics. Velastris relied on the combined knowledge of her diverse crew. Ninji rerouted power through systems in ways Valtari engineers had never considered. Hyon predicted Calthus's moves using human psychological models adapted to Valtari thinking. Engineers from 6 different species kept the shields functioning under bombardment that should have been fatal. In the end, it was not superior weapons that won the fight. It was coordination. It was trust. It was 40 species working as one against one species fighting alone. Kalphas's ship was disabled, its weapons dead, its shields collapsed. Thalastris could have destroyed it. Instead, she offered him the same choice he had once forced on others: submit or die. Kalphas sat in his darkened bridge, his crew dead or unconscious around him. He stared at Thalastris on his screen and understood finally what she had learned. "I yield," he said quietly. The remaining hardliner ships surrendered. Some crews defected to the Coalition. Others requested permission to leave, to find their own path away from both the Empire and the Coalition. Thalastris granted that permission. 3 months later, the Galactic Coalition Charter was signed. 40 species became equal members. No collars. No forced submission. Just voluntary alliance and mutual defense. It was not perfect. There were still tensions, still disputes, still fear and mistrust, but it was a beginning. Jiho stood on an observation deck, watching ships from every species moving through space, trading, and communicating. Thalastris joined him, the former queen, now just one representative among many. "You changed everything with one word," she said. "No," Jiho corrected. "I just said what needed to be said. You and Taiyang and all the others, you did the hard part. You built something new. We built it together," Thalastris said. 41 species. And that number will grow.